Nobody thought this was still possible. Nobody thought this coach was still in play. But right now, the Las Vegas Raiders might be closer to landing an elite head coach than anyone expected. Before we get into everything, make sure you like this video, share it with Raider Nation, and subscribe for non-stop Raiders updates. Now seriously, what if the coach you thought was gone, is actually waiting for the Raiders? Because that's exactly where things stand right now with Mike McDaniel. This entire situation has flipped upside down over the last few days, and if you're a Raiders fan, you need to understand just how wild this really is. Just 3 or 4 days ago, Mike McDaniel officially took the offensive coordinator job with the Los Angeles Chargers. When that news broke, it felt like the door slammed shut. A lot of fans were frustrated, disappointed, even worried. One more elite offensive mind off the market. One more potential miss for the Raiders. And at the time, the fear was real. Clint Kubiak possibly ending up with another team. Mike McDaniel supposedly locked into the Chargers. And the Raiders left scrambling with limited options. But that assumption turned out to be wrong. Because we now know that Mike McDaniel is still very much alive in the Raiders' head coaching search. Not only that, but he's actively declining other opportunities while keeping himself available for Las Vegas. Let's rewind this for a moment. On Monday, January 19th, the same day as the national championship game, the Raiders held an official head coaching interview with Mike McDaniel. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't speculation. The Raiders publicly announced it. Before the championship game kicked off, Mark Davis, John Spytek, Tom Brady, and other key decision-makers met with McDaniel in person. This was a serious interview. A real evaluation. The kind of meeting you don't schedule unless the candidate is high on your list. And when the Chargers news dropped days later, most people assumed that interview no longer mattered. But then everything changed. Albert Breer reported that the Buffalo Bills were scheduling an interview with Mike McDaniel for their head coaching vacancy. That was the first sign that McDaniel was not actually off the market. Think about that for a second. This is a coach who had already accepted an offensive coordinator job, and teams still believed he was open to being a head coach. According to that report, if McDaniel didn't land a head coaching position, he would remain with the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh. That tells you everything you need to know. The Chargers' job was a fallback, not the final destination. And then came the moment that really caught everyone's attention. The Bills' interview never happened. Diana Rossini reported that Mike McDaniel pulled out of his scheduled meeting with Buffalo in Florida. The two sides never met. No conversation. No interview. Nothing. And here's the part that should get every Raiders fan's attention. McDaniel remains in contention for the Raiders' head coaching job. Not only did he pass on Buffalo, but he also declined 1 or 2 other interview opportunities. This wasn't about leverage. This wasn't about shopping offers. This was a clear decision. And ask yourself this early question: why would a coach turn down a team with Josh Allen unless he already had his eyes on something else? That's what makes this situation so fascinating. Coaching matters. It matters more than people want to admit. It matters more than flashy signings. It matters more than even the quarterback in many cases. Look at the history of successful franchises. Look at what happens when the right coach walks through the door. The 49ers struggled for years. Jim Harbaugh arrived, and everything changed. Then one bad coaching hire later, they collapsed. Kyle Shanahan took over, and suddenly they were contenders again almost every year. That's not luck. That's coaching. And Mike McDaniel is one of the most creative offensive designers in the NFL. In Miami, he took a quarterback many people had written off and made him serviceable. Competitive. Playoff level. That doesn't happen by accident. Yes, the Dolphins made mistakes. They paid Tua Tagovailoa too early. They went all in too fast. They pushed for immediate success instead of building patiently. That's what unstable organizations do. And when it failed, McDaniel was the one who paid the price. But that doesn't erase his ability. He's still an elite offensive mind. He's still someone who understands spacing, tempo, play design, and how to put players in positions to succeed. And now, of all teams, he appears to be most interested in the Raiders. Let me ask you something, how often does an elite coach actually want the Raiders' job? This is where the conversation shifts to the bigger picture. From McDaniel's perspective, Las Vegas makes sense. A front office that's becoming more disciplined. Tom Brady involved in football decisions. A clear long-term plan at quarterback coming. This wouldn't be a rushed rebuild. This wouldn't be a one-year experiment. This would be a system being built from the ground up. Imagine McDaniel paired with a smart quarterback like Fernando Mendoza. A quarterback who can read coverages, process quickly, and operate within structure, even if his college offense didn't fully showcase that. Imagine a run game built around Ashton Gentry. An offensive line featuring Colton Miller and Charles Grant in a scheme that actually fits their strengths. That's alignment. That's vision. Now here's the middle of this whole debate, and this is the question of the day, so I want you to comment your answer below. If you're the Raiders, do you hire Mike McDaniel right now, or do you risk waiting for Clint Kubiak? Because that's the dilemma. Clint Kubiak is absolutely a top-tier candidate. But timing matters. If playoff results delay interviews, weeks can pass without clarity. And if you wait too long, you risk losing both options. That's the danger. Worst-case scenario for Mike McDaniel, he stays with the Chargers as offensive coordinator. Worst-case scenario for the Raiders, they wait, miss on Kubiak, and McDaniel walks. That's not a risk you want to take. There are other developments too. Brian Daboll has officially interviewed for the Raiders' head coaching vacancy. He's also up for the Bills' job and has interest from other teams for offensive coordinator roles. He has history with Tom Brady from New England, which makes the connection logical. Is Daboll a bad option? No. Is he the most exciting option? Also no. The development of Daniel Jones raises questions, and the Raiders cannot afford to miss again when it comes to quarterback development. Another update involves Clint Kubiak. The 49ers offensive coordinator has removed himself from head coaching consideration and is staying with Kyle Shanahan. The Raiders and Steelers both requested interviews, but that door is now closed. The Steelers, meanwhile, are planning to hire Mike McCarthy as their next head coach, which officially ends that cycle. So here we are. The Raiders still have a real shot at landing one of the top offensive minds available. A coach who is actively choosing where he wants to go. A coach who is turning down other opportunities to keep the Raiders option alive. This doesn't happen often. And I'll leave you with this final question: how many times do the Raiders actually get a moment like this and choose correctly? Because this decision could define the next 5 years. Get it right, and everything changes. Get it wrong, and you're back to square one. And right now, Mike McDaniel is waiting.